Well, what's going on, everybody? This is Adam Caplan with the brand new AC Radio. The unanimous decision is no more. I couldn't contain myself. I didn't only want to talk about MMA and boxing. I want to talk about fitness. I want to share the lens of my personal training business with you all. I want to talk a little bit about social psychology, a little bit of current events, a little bit of the everyday shit that we all kind of go through, So this show is not only going to be for MMA and sports fans in general. This is going down to the everyday person as well. This is going out to y'all. I mean, there are too many things to talk about in this world for me to just put myself in a box in a niche market. But, of course, my one and true love, fighting, I have to bring it to the table. I have to analyze it. I have to break it down with all of you. So here we are. Got the brand new setup in the studio right now, which is also the gym that I run my business out of, AC Boxing and Fitness. And I'm just really proud to have been able to build a facility for myself that not only could I use to train myself and train my clients, but now I could have this podcast to, touch even more people out there. And I don't mean physically, I mean through the heart, okay? We're not getting canceled on episode 1, baby. That ain't happening. Let's not wait. Let's cut right to the chase. You know me, I want to talk about that MMA right away. So let's break it down. We got Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev, coming up this Saturday at UFC 273. Now, Chimaev has been on an absolute tear. He's beaten everybody in the UFC. I believe that he has put out 112 significant strikes and has probably only received about 2 strikes. Chimaev is a force to be reckoned with, training out of Sweden right now. He's a Chechnyan-born fighter who's very strong at wrestling, has an extremely well-versed game, and Gilbert Burns has his handful. But let's not sleep on Gilbert Burns now. Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's 35 years old. He's fought predominantly the majority of his career in the UFC. So let's not take away what Gilbert Burns has brought to the table so far, especially at the fact that he is dangerous on the floor. And it'll be interesting to see how the scrambles go when Chimaev goes to take down Gilbert Burns. How will the scrambles fare? Now, we're not really going to know until we watch. Everybody is basically saying that Chimaev is going to go in there and perform the exact same way that he has before, use his ground and pound, utilize that aggression and that momentum that he's riding on. Gilbert Burns is coming off a loss against the great Kamaru Usman, the pound-for-pound best fighter in the UFC, and it's going to be tough to see how Gilbert is going to fare now. This is his last shot. He's got to go balls to the wall. We've obviously seen improvements in his boxing as well, but this is going to be a tough fight. I'm looking for Chimaev to back Gilbert Burns up to the cage, take him down, utilize the ground and pound, and go backstage with Darren Till and have a couple of cheeseburgers. Now, on Gilbert Burns' side, I'm looking for him to be deadly and be active in the scrambles. Every time Chimaev is looking to take down Gilbert Burns, Burns has to jump on something, go for a Kimura, go for a leg lock. He needs to utilize this jiu-jitsu game. Otherwise, we could see another ground and pound finish by Chimaev. I really think that Gilbert Burns is going to have his hands full on the feet, the size difference, the reach advantage that Chimaev brings to the table, and also that aggression. I really think that Gilbert is going to have his hands full on the feet, so look for Gilbert Burns to try to capitalize in the transitions and the scrambles. I'm not going to be giving my predictions on the show of who I'm going with. I have been dabbling in a little bit of sports betting, but I won't be sharing my picks with anybody just yet. I'm not really willing to put anybody else's bank account at my mercy. And another thing, too, is that we want to try to keep the show as professional as possible. I obviously have an idea of who I think is going to win, but you know what? Let's get a little bit more interaction in the social media comment section and on Instagram and on YouTube and on Twitter and TikTok, etc. Let's create more of a dialogue together, and then perhaps I'll start talking about my predictions a little bit more. Moving on, we got a controversial fight right now. We got Aljamain Sterling, who's the champion of the UFC bantamweight division, versus Peter Yan from Russia. Now, this is a controversial one because Aljamain won the belt because Peter Yan committed a foul. He landed an illegal knee to Aljamain Sterling, almost knocking him out. if not knocking him out, definitely concussing him. And Aljamain took the right path. He decided not to continue, and he was deemed the champion. Now, at first he played a bit of the Justin Gaethje role. He was a bit pouty. He wasn't interested in proclaiming himself as the champion. But as soon as he got back to the locker room and a couple people patted him on the back, he was ready to admit that he was the champion. Now, this has started an ongoing beef between Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. And Sterling also, I believe, needed to get neck surgery, so that prolonged the fight even more. And April 9th, here we are, and more adversity has set in. Peter Yan's corner is not able to attend the fight due to the crisis that's going on between Ukraine and Russia. And that'll be interesting to see how Peter Yan responds. I mean, some funny back and forth banter is going between Peter Yan and Sugar Sean and Henry Cejudo that they're going to corner him. Now that would be interesting, but I don't think that that's going to happen. But there's a lot of animosity and drama going into this fight, and a lot of folks are not giving Aljamain Sterling a chance in hell. What people fail to realize is that he was ridiculously active in the first 3 rounds, I believe. And obviously that showed in the 4th and 5th round, the championship rounds, when you saw that energy dump happen, and he just clearly wasn't as, he really wasn't able to get anything off in the later rounds. And that's when Yan started to take over and then got a little bit ahead of himself and landed that illegal knee. But Aljamain's got to come out with the same tenacity, the same ferociousness, the same pace, and the same amount of volume that he came in the first bout. Peter Yan is a fantastic counter fighter, but everybody will eventually have a little bit of trouble off of their back foot when they're constantly getting rushed and they're constantly dealing with the barrage of punches and just the overall variety that Aljamain Sterling can bring to the table. He does use his kicks and his lower limbs just as much as he uses his hands and his elbows. So that'll be an interesting fight, but Peter Yan is one of the most ferocious boxers in the UFC. He's a fantastic counter fighter. He's just a natural born killer. And I think that Aljamain Sterling psychologically is having a little bit of a difficult time dealing with Peter Yan. And we're really going to see what these fighters are made of in the 4th and 5th rounds on Saturday night, because that's what I think this fight is going to come down to. It's definitely going to go all 5 rounds, I believe. And should it not, I'm looking for one of these guys to obviously be devastating on the feet. I don't think that wrestling will be much of a factor. I mean, Yan has such great takedown defense. He's got a nice well-verse of judo trips, actually, and a little bit of cage wrestling. Definitely some dominant ground and pound, but I think Aljamain Sterling is well-versed in the wrestling and scrambling department to keep this fight standing. So I'm looking for a lot of volume and a very, very, very entertaining kickboxing fight. And it'll be interesting to see who will come into the octagon more emotional. Is it going to be Aljamain Sterling or is it going to be Peter Yan? I think that that's going to be the factor. The one who's going to be more cold and calculated will definitely be the one that comes home with the belt. And I think that both of these fighters have definitely focused on their strength and conditioning in this camp, knowing that this is going to go perhaps all 5 rounds. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think that compared to the Chimaev-Burns fight, the Chimaev-Burns fight actually interests me more in terms of what's going to happen on the ground or happen more in the scrambling. For the Aljamain fight versus Peter Yan, I'm more interested to see the tactics in the kickboxing and boxing department, especially from Peter Yan, who's very strong at counterfighting, and then an Aljamain Sterling who put on a phenomenal pace for 3 rounds against Peter Yan. So I'm looking for this one to be action-packed. Don't be surprised if somebody breaks the significant strikes or the amount of punches or strikes thrown in a bout. Record broken in this one. Let me take a sip of that Happy Dad. No sponsor, no ad. I'm going to segue for a second. Happy Dad was made by the Nelk Boys, and I'm a big fan of them, big YouTubers. They keep me entertained, and they came out with this drink, Happy Dad, and it's funny, every time I go down to Florida, I pick up a case. I'm probably one of the few Montrealers who's actually had, several Happy Dads. And I got to say, I enjoy it. Pineapple, watermelon, wild cherry, lemon lime. All of them are pretty good. I have no idea why I'm plugging it like this. I mean, maybe one day they'll sponsor me, but, we're not desperate. In fact, we're hungry to talk about Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean zombie, Chan Sung Jung. I mean, this is just an action-packed one, baby. I mean, you're looking at Alexander Volkanovski, a 23-1 record against the Korean zombie, 17-6. I mean, people forget that Chan Sung Jung had to leave his career in the early 2010s. He had to leave his career because it was a mandatory requirement for him to represent the Korean military. Now, he had to leave the UFC when he was basically on top. I believe it was very close to after he beat Dustin Poirier at featherweight. And here he is. He's still doing it. He's here over 10 years later, still at the top of the pack, and he's ready to take on the featherweight champ, Alex Volkanovski, who has been on an absolute tear. I mean, we've seen him go back-to-back bouts against the mighty Max Holloway, utilize the leg kicks, just an intelligent, smart fighter, an extremely smart fighter. And then we see him fight Brian Ortega, which he puts on an absolute clinic. And then at the end, he almost gets submitted by T-City in a tight guillotine. Ortega is the absolute best on the ground in the featherweight department. But Alexander Volkanovski earned another stripe on his belt, and that's the resilience and the heart and the courage that we already knew that he had, but he demonstrated it in a way, in a Tyson Fury-esque way, when he got knocked down by Deontay Wilder and then got up to win the rest of the round. That's what Volkanovski really showed, that resilience, and I think that resilience is going to shine again. Volkanovski has been on another level in terms of his intelligence, his kickboxing, his Muay Thai, and overall just the variety of mixing up the strikes and then ending off the shots with the leg kicks has been such a joy to watch, such a beauty to watch. And, it's kind of tough because a lot of folks are not necessarily getting behind Alex Volkanovski. Maybe it could be the Australian thing. It could be because he's, a little bit of the lighter weights. I'm not really sure what it is, but, I definitely think that Volk is going to have his hands full on the feet. Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, is someone who's constantly going to come forward and is going to be in Volk's face for 5 rounds. And Volk is going to be prepared for it. I think that he's definitely going to be prepared as per usual. This fight's going to be staying on the feet. We're going to have a hard bout. I'm looking for Volk to really use his pace, his conditioning, mix up his strikes, chop that leg down with the leg kicks. And the Korean zombie, as per usual, is looking to stay in Volk's face and to be a zombie, to be relentless in terms of the boxing coming forward. There will be blood. There will be guts. Put your kids early to bed tonight because that's going to be 5 rounds of action. And I actually think that between the Aljo fight and the Volkanovski fight, we are going to have potentially 50 full minutes of nonstop action. And this is really going to make for a fantastic UFC event. And what's great to see is that, the lighter weights are, we've always had issues with the flyweight division not being popular enough. And everybody knows that the bantamweight has the most fighters in the UFC in that division. So just to see that these guys are main eventing and co-main eventing and they're stacking each other, it just really goes to show you how far the UFC has come. And I'm just really, really thrilled for this event, and I can't wait for it. I think we have at the top of the card those 3 action-packed fights, and the results could go either way. I have more of a bias towards each guy. Comment below who you got, baby. You got Volkanovski or Chan Sung Jung? Do you have Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan? Or do you have Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev? And, that's what we have for the UFC 273 breakdown. Now, obviously, since I've started this podcast and I want to talk about other things, I'm speaking so fast today. I'm so hyped up. I'm on the show. My heart's racing. We're going at it. But, it's time to show more sides of myself and not only try to educate people in terms of MMA and boxing, but, also a little bit about fitness as well. As people must know, I'm a personal trainer. I run my own business, AC Boxing and Fitness, and you're obviously listening to AC Radio now. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a theme going on where we're trying to, or we are building out the AC brand. And that's something that I'm really, really proud of. That's something that I take a lot of pride in. And, if you stayed around so far, I thank you for staying around. And we're actually going to get into a little bit of fitness talk because, there's a question that keeps coming back to me is how do I lose weight? How do I lose weight? And how do I lose weight? And, I'll be honest with you, the pandemic has been difficult for me as well. I've put on a few. I'm not comfortable in my own skin. But you know what? I get in front of this fucking camera and I spit game because that's what I do. Doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter how you feel. When you're talented at something, nobody could take that away from you. It doesn't matter if you're good looking, you're ugly, you're fat, you're skinny, or you're a perfect 10 on 10. When you have talent is above all, okay? And, one thing that I've been focusing on is my protein intake. Too many people right now are too concerned about, heart disease and heart attacks and, if I eat too much red meat, will I die of a heart attack? I mean, unfortunately, when we do the research, it seems like a lot of things that we indulge in could be a detriment to us. Now, obviously, studies do show that eating an adequate amount of protein does not hurt your heart. I think more importantly, what actually causes the problem is, people are eating the wrong sources of protein. It's like when someone tells me sugar is sugar, the sugar from a fruit is not the sugar from a candy bar, just like the protein source from a chicken nugget is not the same of a chicken breast. So we always need to check ourselves and ask ourselves, am I eating the cleanest source of this protein? And one of the things that I find people do is that they undereat, so they're in a calorie deficit, but they're not counting their protein macros. And the problem is that when you don't count your protein macros, yes, you lose weight, but you need to understand something. You don't only lose fat, you also lose muscle. And then what starts to happen is you see that folks who spend a lot of time on the treadmill or the stationary bike and don't do a lot of cardio, don't do a lot of strength training and only do cardio, what starts to happen is that they start to develop a bit of a skinny fat look. And the problem is with that is you're not lean. You will still actually score relatively high on the body fat percentage because you've also lost muscle. So to those out there that are on a weight loss program and don't know where to start, the number one thing is hit your protein targets. Okay, very simple formula for you. Okay, maybe we're going to pop that up right here. We'll see what my homie Brett's going to do. Okay, we call him Brett Hall. Why? Because Brett Hall was on the same line or on the same team as Wayne Gretzky. And some call me the great one, baby. Cue the crickets. Anyways, when you are calculating your protein target, you want to take 0.75 grams and multiply that by your body weight. Okay, first we'll start with 0.75. If you're someone who's already more familiar with this, or perhaps you're a bigger body or you're already quite active, then perhaps we'll use 1 gram times your body weight. And that's the amount of protein that you should be hitting in a day. Whether you're eating it through salmon, chicken breast, sirloin, medium or lean ground beef, whey protein powder, whey isolate, plant-based, whatever the fuck it is, tofu, nuts, proteins that are found in vegetables. These are all clean sources of protein. So the number one thing is, guys, is that you need to calculate your protein intake, 0.75 times your body weight. And then what we could do is you got to buy a food scale. Don't be that guy. Or don't be that girl. You got to buy a food scale. And once you've bought in that food scale, you could start measuring out your sources of protein. Enter it into MyFitnessPal, and that'll calculate how much protein you've eaten in a day. And that's super important because what's going to happen is while we're lowering our body fat percentage, while we're trying to lose weight, we're also maintaining muscle mass, okay? Because we either want to maintain or promote muscle growth by hitting our protein targets, okay? I'm not going to go any further into that explanation because it's very simple. 0.75 times your body weight is your protein intake. Then you got to get a food scale and you got to measure out all your sources of protein. Why? Because, what's the quote? You can't really see what you can't measure. So to all those out there that fail to measure their food, you're only failing yourself. And the thing is we all want to look good. We all want to look skinny. We all want to look sexy. But when we let our actions take over, we realize that we don't do anything. So do my thoughts and my actions actually add up? My thought is that I want to look sexy, I want to look skinny, but my action is I do the bare minimum. So how badly do we really fucking want it if our thought is saying, you're fat, you need to feel better about yourself and you need to move, but my action is I don't want to measure my food and I want to stay comfortable? How are we actually going to get anywhere? You know, if we want to make changes, we have to make sacrifice, and that's what I'm learning on my own too. I've got my MyFitnessPal. I've got my protein intake that I'm doing now. I have a weightlifting program now, and obviously I knew how to do all of these things as a personal trainer. But you know what? I don't claim to be Superman. I'm a human as well, and I get lost in the sauce too, and I get so focusing on my clientele, etc., that I forget about myself. So what did I do? I reached out to a coach. Guys, if we're having trouble, talk to somebody. Find a YouTuber that you could watch his or her content and educate yourself. Talk to somebody you know in the fitness industry. Use your tools. Use Google. Use YouTube. Use your mouth. Speak to people. But knowing without application is nothing. You could know and know and know, but if you do not apply, how are we going to get to where we need to be? You know? And that's my goal for 2022. And I'm speaking right to the camera when I say this, is to lead by example more. To lead by example. Okay? That is what I'm setting the record straight for 2022, to lead by example. I've let myself go over the last 2 years, and I'm talking into a fucking camera admitting it. Something that a lot of folks can't even do in the mirror, but here we are. So guys, when we're on that weight loss journey, we got to make sure that we're hitting that protein target, because if we're hitting that protein target, when the fat starts to strip away, the muscle is going to come out more. We're going to be stronger. We're going to be sexier. We're going to be more confident. And that is exactly why it is important to calculate your protein intake. We're not worried about carbs. We're not worried about fats. We need to be in a caloric deficit, and we need to hit our protein intake. You could eat whatever sources of protein that you're comfortable with. That's your prerogative, whether you're vegan, whether you're pescatarian, whether you're a carnivore. Maybe you don't like to eat food in general. Maybe you're only on a liquid diet. I don't agree with it, but we're not here to talk about what you should be eating. We're here right now talking about that you should be hitting your protein target. So for me, that's really something that has been coming up a lot, is a lot of people don't know where to start. Hey, let's start with a walk every day. Let's start with 30 minutes of activity, and let's focus on hitting our protein target. And the thing is too, is that when you start to eat healthy, you also realize that you could eat an abundance of food. You know, your volume increases because everything that you're eating is nutrient dense. So then your plate gets fuller, and you realize I actually can't finish my plate when my food is on the healthier side. Why? Because it's nutrient dense and it's also low calorie. You know, MyFitnessPal, another great tool besides Google, besides YouTube, besides a friend. These are all great things. So that's you know, me keeping it short. That's what we're going to talk about today in the fitness department, is more about our protein count, calculating our calories, focusing on nutrient dense food. Ooh, got that happy dad sitting in me, baby. I might have to let out a burp or something. But that's what we're focusing on. We're just keeping it small today, guys. Calculating your protein is something that is pivotal. And you need to understand something. When you're on a weight loss journey, or you're on a bulking journey, you're on any sort of fitness journey, okay? It's like anything else. There are moments where you're going to want to be like, oh, really? I got to do this? Like, fuck this. That's part of the game, baby. That's part of the game. When you're climbing those steps, or you're making a hike, or etc., is every part of the hike lovely? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, when you get to the top and you get to enjoy the summit, when you get to enjoy the view, you forget about all of the struggle. And that is exactly why we do all of this, because when we get to the top, we forget about all of the pain and suffering that we went through, and we reap the benefits of all of the changes that we have now made. And that's a really, really big deal. Guys, appreciate the small steps. Stop worrying about up here. worry about each step down here. Because the reality is we always look at people at the end product. And we always wish that we were a fly on the wall to see the pain and suffering that some of these people have gone through so that we can understand, oh shit, maybe they don't have everything they ever wanted so easily or whatever it is. We always judge the finished product. There's a reason why boxers are so private in their training camp. The reason that is because things don't go that smooth and it's fucking tough and it has challenges. And for every little detail that your opponent knows about you that you're struggling in is an extra point in their corner. Okay, and that's why when you look at these final products of all of these influencers and famous people or whatever, we're not taking into account the small steps that it took everybody to get there. So guys, calculate that protein. Okay? Eat nutrient dense food. You don't know what that is? Google it. Comment below, DM me at AC Radio _ or my personal at Adam Caplan 13. Ask somebody. People want to help you. But if you don't want to help yourself, then fuck out of here. Because you're wasting people's fucking time. And I've wasted enough people's time in my day. And we're not doing that in 2022, right? We're leading by example. And I want people to put me in my place when I'm not. You know, there's always a reason. There's always a rational. And now you've got me ranting on camera, but we're not ranting anymore. Why? Because when we're going to set an intention, we're going to follow through with it. Calculate your protein, eat nutrient-dense food, appreciate the small goals. Don't worry about the end of the road picture. Don't worry about the big picture. Appreciate the small goals. And last but not least, don't be ranting, man. Take a few breaths and enjoy the sunset. I want to thank you all for coming today. This is AC Radio. Subscribe here below. We're on Instagram at AC Radio _ on TikTok at AC Radio. You could follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at my personal at Adam Caplan 13. Again, everybody, we're going to be talking MMA, boxing, fitness, life lessons, social psychology, current events. Maybe my man Brett's going to get in here a few times and ask me a couple of questions. We're going to maybe have like a Q&A segment or a what's on Adam's mind. I want feedback, everybody. Comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, share. DM me with what you thought about it. How do you like the set? What do you think about that neon light I got at my bar mitzvah? I'm 30 years old now, and I got this light still. How are you? And listen, man, have a couple of happy dads. Have a good one. Welcome to the AC Radio Show. It's going to be a great journey, baby. See you then.